I just started like relaxing, like, oh, this is just everything I wanted, just everything I needed in that moment.
Today's guest is wild woman Brittany Colt. Her deep connection to nature and wild places has pushed her to become the artist that she is today. Being blind in one eye means that she sees the world with a unique vision, and it's beautifully apparent in her landscape photography. Since 2012, Brittany has explored many genres of photography, including portraiture, landscape, and wedding photography. She recently launched her own company focused on fine art, photography education, and empowering women through the Flying Dress Experience. Find out more about Brittany and her work at Brittany, Brittany, Colt, Colt.com. Now on to the episode. Let's go. I could snort.
Just open it up with that.
So when we were kids, we used to play this game called, I don't even know where we found it, but I grew up in a family with 6 girls.
Oh.
Yeah. And so there were a lot of us in the house. So we could have full on like competitive games, right? Or or do games that involved a group, and someone would always have friends over. So there would always be like at least 8 to 10 people there. And we played this game called Grunt Piggy Grunt.
Is it something you guys made up, or is it a real?
It's a real game. I don't know where I heard it from. But it's super fun because everybody sits in a circle and you get like rolled up newspaper or like one of those like leftover wrapping paper tubes that's kind of long. And you put someone in the middle. Everyone's sitting down either on chairs or actually chairs is no fun. You have to be cross-legged or like sitting on the floor in a big circle. And you put a blindfold on someone and put them in the middle. And then you hand them the rolled up newspaper or the tube or the cardboard, and you spin them around. And then that person says, when they come to a stop, grunt, piggy, grunt. Or no, actually, that's not true. This is not really part of the podcast, but whatever. So that person has to kind of make their way around to someone and they whack them. Not hard, but like you touch them. And then the person who's it with the tube says, grunt, piggy, grunt. And the person who's sitting has to grunt. And so sometimes you can tell just by kind of like the sound of their voice, or they're trying to just hide who they are. Because if that person guesses who you are, then you have to run and they have to tag you, or I don't remember what it is, but.
Oh, so people have their eyes closed.
No. So the person has the blindfold. Let's see. Gosh, now I have to remember. So the person is blindfolded. They hit someone. They say, grunt, piggy, grunt. That person grunts.
Mm-hmm.
And if the it person guesses who you are, and the it person has a chance to tag you. So it creates a chance to tag you. But if it's not right, then you have to, then that person, and someone goes, no, someone else goes, no, that's not right. And then they have to move on. That's so silly game.
Yeah, it sounds like fun.
There is a lot of like, or.
That's hilarious.
Long story, but the grunting made me think of that. And anyway, Brittany and I were talking about doing like clearing our throats and doing a little grunting before we came on. So, oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This is actually, I don't even know you that well. And this is the first time that we've talked face to face, and I hope it's not our last.
Oh, yeah, me too. For sure.
So here's what I want to tell everyone. If you listen to the podcast before, I have a little form that I ask people to fill out. And mostly it's to like, one, to help me understand like who the other person is. And so that's really helpful. I get links and all good things. And then also it gives my guest today, you, Brittany, the opportunity to like remember some of your own personal experiences. And I just want to say yours are amazing. and also very well like lengthy and thought out. And I feel like you could write a book.
Oh man, that'd be fun.
Maybe if you're a writer. Maybe you need like a
I do like to write, but
do you? Do you have a blog? Because I don't remember seeing that.
I have a newsletter.
So if you want to read Brittany's writing, you have to subscribe to her newsletter because that's the only way you're going to get it.
Yeah, I'm terrible with my blog. It's a lot to keep up on.
I know. I know today I am working on a blog post for my South Africa adventure and I'm editing the podcast. And I know it's going to be, I know it's the podcast is a little longer and the blog post is kind of lengthy. And so I'm trying to remember everything and it's kind of difficult because I'm not really detail oriented. I don't know.
Yeah, that would make it a little bit more difficult to remember little events.
Right.
Especially when you're on a trip like that.
I know, but I'm doing it for my own personal benefit because in 6 months, I'm not going to remember all of the things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's what the power of writing. I love it. Can remember small details.
Yeah. Like I'm surprised you remembered so many details from your adventures, you know?
I think I have written some down before. Like a couple stories I wrote a blog post about. Yeah. The last one I did. So I could remember, I went back to that blog post and like remembered.
Oh, the one in, is it Buena Vista or Buena Vista?
Buena Vista, Colorado. Yeah.
Well, welcome. And the audience already kind of knows a little bit about you because I've already given a short bio. And if they want to find out more, they can go to your website. But maybe since I already mentioned Buena Vista, Colorado, maybe we just start right into that one because you talk about this is like one of the craziest moments you've experienced. And you go on this like elopement backpacking adventure and there's all of these things that happen. And then the end is like, because I feel like when you get to the end, it should feel like, now we're finished with that thing that also felt crazy. And then it was just like a whirlwind. Like there was no time for decompressing, right? So, but don't start there.
Yeah.
Start the
So my partner has a wedding business and he got hired to go on a backpacking elopement. So hiking, I don't even know how many miles we went, but if you're going up steep mountainside, we all know what it's like to hike up a mountain with heavy gear on our backs. And so he invited me along. At this point in my life, I was still working for the Ansel Adams Gallery in Yosemite. And so I decided, yes, I want to go along with him and help him carry equipment and gear. And he brought 5 different lenses and we brought 2 camera bodies. And then plus, all our backpacking gear. So he mostly took most of the camera equipment and I took, all the beer canister and the food and the cook stove and all that. And so we're hiking up. We're about probably a half hour up the trail and you realized I forgot my tripod. So the rest of the group, because we were hiking with the wedding party, was like, okay, we're going to just go on ahead. And we couldn't, like, usually for wedding photographers, we don't use tripods, right? But they really specifically wanted a photograph underneath the stars and you need a tripod for that. So he hiked back down. I stayed on the trail just waiting for him to arrive. So already we already backpacking and was a little bit delayed. And by the time he got back, it was like an hour later. And then we started on her journey. We got up there. And by that time we got up to the base camp, I was exhausted. I mean, this was like my first backpacking trip of this season. And it was kind of pretty early on in the season. So I was really tired. But that night they wanted to go do some star photos. But one thing that I don't know if it just got, like the bride just forgot, but to where they wanted the spot to get their photos and get married at, it was another like 2 hours up. to the mountain because they wanted to like be by this lake, and they had really awesome memories by this lake because they've already done this trail before. And so we had to hike 2 hours up to this location, take their photos underneath the stars. It's cold, it's ripping wind. And the bride's in her wedding dress. She was a trooper. We got the shots, came back down the trail to sleep, and then they wanted a sunrise elopement. So we got up around like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Already I was exhausted from the day before, and we hiked back up, and we made it just in time. Like the bride comes up behind us, and she's an athlete, so she was jogging her way up the mountain, no problem. and and then she changes real fast, and everyone gets ready, and all that time, the sun, it's really beautiful. We get done with this job around like, I want to say sometime early afternoon, around 12 o'clock. And they get married and everything's wonderful. And we're like, all right, let's hike back down to base camp. Let's take our time. And so we did. And by this time, like, we're tired already, but we just wanted to get back down to our car. And all I could think about was soaking in these wonderful hot springs that we stayed the night prior to our backpacking trip. And that's all I was like, I just need to soak my body in some wonderful hot water. Like that was just the whole.
This resonates with me.
We worked our butt off, we hiked several miles going back and forth, between the base camp and where they wanted to get married. We're tired. We're exhausted. My knees going downhill.
And you started tired. Like you already started a little tired, right? Because of the whole tripod thing. How frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're just beat. We're just exhausted. And just with the gear, 5 different lenses. And, when someone's getting married, you want to make sure you're bringing all the lenses you need. And like, that's what was, my partner's. He did not skimp on this one, on this wedding. Like he had all the gear.
Did he use all those lenses, by the way?
I think so.
Oh my God.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And with weddings, you use primes. You don't use, because you want that beautiful, smooth, bokeh background. Like you don't, like you have to have certain lenses to get the certain feel and the look for, it's completely different than wedding photography. I mean, different than landscape photography. So
wait a minute here. I want to pause here because in your notes you say, and I was close to tears. And I just feel like sometimes we have this moment where like, should I cry? Do I want to let myself cry?
I was not in a good mood that day. Definitely not in the best mood. Like we were like, going downhill is what got me going back down because of my knees. At this point in my life, I'm starting to have some physical issues that I wasn't having in my 20s. And like,
wait, how old are you here?
It was like a couple years ago. So I probably had been like 32, 34. But like when I moved to Yosemite when I was 28, and that's when I was like, oh man, my body is not the same. Right. I can't just do a hike and then recover and just be fine. It's going to take a few more days to recover than what it was like backpacking in my 20s.
Right now, all of us 40 and 50 somethings are like, say it, girl.
Yes. A lot of stretching,
I know. But there are exercises actually that we can do to like strengthen our knees and strengthen our ankles and stuff like that so that, and build up our CO2 tolerance so that the hiking is actually, a lot easier as well as practice. But this one I get because it was like your first hike of this, like kind of your first hike of the season. And I feel like that one is always frustrating. So to be like doing all these things with it being your first hike of the season, or early in the season where you haven't built up like all your muscles and your stamina and all those things.
Exactly. I mean, at that point, like I was walking like 4 miles a day, but still like going uphill is different than just being on the Yosemite Valley floor leading groups. It's just, and the heavy weight too.
Yeah.
Is you know,
It's no joke.
something could be considered. It is definitely no joke. And, all your backpacking equipment and everything, it's serious, it's like athlete, like, but, being this is not my gig, it was my partner's gig, I was like, "Okay, yeah, whatever, I'm just along for the ride." And so we're hiking on our way back down, and all I could think about this wonderful hot springs to soak my sore body in. I was just like, "I just really want this, like, I'm ready for it." Um, and so we finally get back down there, and but like we left before everyone else because they went to hike up the last peak. And by the time we got down there, we were there just for 5 minutes, and they all were down to their cars too. The rest of the wedding party, I was like, these people are crazy. But then I think about it, I was like, okay, they didn't have all that gear, so
That's right.
they have all that camera gear, so that made me like, okay, I'm not that much of a loser, type thing. So I was just like, Sean, we really just need to go soak in this wonderful hot spring. So we went to the hot spring, and I just started like relaxing, like, oh, this is just everything I wanted, just everything I needed in that moment. But 10 minutes later goes by, and we're just like soaking, and all of a sudden we just hear this loud car crash. And there was this main highway right off the hot springs road. Um, and everyone was like, okay, that's weird. And then we started hearing yelling, just people just yelling at each other. And then we heard gunshots. And then that's when we all got out of the hot springs, and we all went to what do we do? We just like go to the furthest building away from the scene. Right. But before that, before like when we heard the gunshots, we're like, was that really gunshots? Like, and then we heard a car come screeching into the hot springs yelling, "Hey, I have been shot. Please call 911." And that's when we were like, all right, let's get out of the pool. So we got out of the pool. We went to the men's restroom, which was the furthest building away from the scene. And we're like all panicking. And they're like, what do we do? Like, and Sean and I decided like, we're going to get dressed real fast. So we went in one of the changing rooms, we got dressed real fast. I'm like, we're going to get out of here. If there's a shooter on site, I don't want anything to do with it. Right. But no one from the hot springs ever came out and calmed us down. Nothing, no communication
So
whatsoever,
weird.
no employee, right?
They're like this, nothing to see here.
Yeah.
I'm waving my hand. Nothing to see here. All good.
Yeah, there's nothing going on. You can continue your soak, I'm like, so we got finished dressed, and we went to the office because that's like on our way to our car. And I went in there, and I'm seeing them clean up blood off the floor. And I'm like, okay, this is not good. I like, Sean, let's get out of here. Let's just go. So we hop in his truck. And as we're driving out, 6 cop cars started coming in, like screaming in. And we were stuck on this bridge. It's a 1-lane bridge. So we had to back out, let all the cops in, and we just got out of there. And at that point, I was close to tears. At that point, like, because we reserved, there's this house that the hot springs own, an off-site house, kind of like an Airbnb. And we reserved a room in that house. And I was like, is it safe to even go to the house?
Right,
Like,
right.
is this a sketchy place? Like, what's going on type of thing? And I was like, okay, Sean, I'm staying in the car. You scope out this house, because now I'm feeling sketched out. I'm like, who are these people? Type thing. And no, everything was fine. We talked to the people who were renting the house as well, and they're just like, thought it was crazy. They left a few minutes prior to that happening. They saw the cop cars and stuff. And I just instantly had to hop in the bathtub and just soak my body. I was so like emotionally and physically like drained. I don't think I've ever been that drained in my life.
Well, so what's crazy is there was a lot of physical exhaustion going up the hill, waiting, waking up, early and being tired and carrying all the gear. And then you lumped on top of it this like emotional stress, like exhaustion too. So I'm surprised you didn't cry. Seriously.
I think there was. I just don't quite remember if I cried or not. But I was to the point where I was just like, holy moly, like what was that? We could have
Mhm.
been caught or get in a horrible situation
Right.
just by soaking in a hot spring, like you just never know what's going to happen. So what I learned from that story, always look for an exit wherever you're at.
Mm.
Always look for an exit. I never even thought about that. And I was like, where was the exit? There wasn't like the nearest exit. Like, I decided that's how I'm going to, if I go into any public situation, just scope out the nearest exit because you just never know what's going to happen.
Even if you're super tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's where we make mistakes because, I was just on my backpacking adventure, and on the last day I was super tired, also straight downhill, like my knees were hurting,
Mm.
and I remember thinking, no, go slow. No, go slow. Just go slow. No, you're not in a hurry. You're not in a hurry because when we get tired and we allow ourselves to kind of like space out, we're not as vigilant. When we get tired, we're not as vigilant as we could be. And so having
Mhm.
those reminders like, oh, hey, now's not the time to relax. Although, like, you should be able to relax in a hot spring.
Yeah, yeah. But at that point, I think, the adrenaline kicked in and it's like, all
Mhm.
right, let's get ourselves out of this situation. That was my first thought. It's like, let's leave. Yeah, like, if we're not feeling safe and they're not communicating with us what's going on, or I don't even know if we're safe, and that's, I feel like their greatest downfall was not communicating with us. Hey, everything's fine. Someone's just got injured. We called the cops. They didn't even tell us that. They're just like, no, it's fine.
They're like, you're fine. It's okay. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, at least you
So
can handle it. And also, I hope you got a do over in the hot spring.
the next morning we did.
Good. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Sometimes it's like that, right? Like it's like being able to deal with the unexpected. And now you can handle that. And now you know that crazy things are going to happen when you're kind of least expecting them.
Exactly. I mean, that's just life in general, especially when you're traveling. Weird things just
I
happen,
know.
and it's beyond your control. So,
It's so true. So one of the things that you and I were chatting about before, thank you for telling that story. Also so crazy. I'm sure people are thinking about this going, where's my exit? The closest to me right at
yeah.
this moment. So one of the things that we were chatting about before we started recording was about our community, and you're a supporter of empowering. You love to empower women, but like our small conversation was about uh the landscape community or the photography community, how there's a lot of men in it. And, kind of I shared a little bit about my recent experience. And one of the reasons I was thinking about that is because you talk about this experience, like, um, for yourself when you wanted to do something and anyway, will you share this experience, as and part of it there, I think there's multifacets to this experience for you, and safety, and also using your intuition and just going after something, even though you know which one I'm talking about, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Just going after something, even if you don't totally like know how to do it, asking for help, things like all of those things is kind of like wrapped up into this experience. And so what I love, spoiler for the audience, what I love is that you had experience with this guy, this male photographer. And I think it was a good one. And so I think these are important, for us to hear, because sometimes as women, I think we're afraid of being out alone with other people and it feeling like really creepy or sketchy. And it doesn't always
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be like that. So,
Mhm.
anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So, this is when I first moved to Yosemite. I just finished getting a divorce literally a few days prior to moving to Yosemite, uplifting my life and working for the Ansel Adams Gallery as a photographer. And so I was really new, and I moved in May. And in the springtime, Yosemite has this beautiful natural phenomenon called a moon bow, which is when you have a full moon and it's hitting the mist of the waterfall. So you have to have lots of water and you have to have a full moon. And then you get like a rainbow at night. So that's what a moonbow is. And so me and my roommate at the time was like, let's go photograph this moonbow, and I just bought a new camera, and this was my mistake. I just bought a new camera and I was going to go photograph it with it at night. Not really that familiar, but I'm a Canon shooter. So you would think, Canon's pretty set up pretty similarly, but not really. Every model's different. But, so I get myself in this situation. I'm in Cook's Meadow. A few other photographers are surrounding me. And I'm just like, why is my camera stuck on L mode? What is that? Like, what is L mode? And like, I've seen this before, it's like, oh, what's this? And this guy overhears me and is like, oh, I know what's wrong with your camera. This actually affected me a few years ago, and it took me an hour to figure it out. And here, let me help you. So he takes my camera off of aperture lock. That's somehow I got on. And honestly, that's a design flaw on Canon, because on my Canon camera, it's right on the backside, could easily be flipped up, right? That little switch. And so I was like, oh, I felt so dumb, but he was just so nice. He didn't, some men can, try to mansplain and stuff like that, but he was not like that, right? He was very kind, and he was just like, oh, that happened to me. And I just got good energy from him. So I was like, okay, cool. Thank you. So before I was going to leave, he's like, oh, we should go hike up the Upper Yosemite Fall together tomorrow evening. And I was like, that sounds really cool. I want to do this. Like, this sounds awesome. And not being familiar with the park, right? Like, I need someone to guide me up there no matter what, because I've never went up that trail, and going up at night by myself didn't sound like a good situation.
No.
So I was like,
and we'll talk about that in a minute. There's multiple factors why. But also, were you a little like, did it feel a little bit weird partly because you were like newly divorced? You know what I mean? Like, this is a new situation for you too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that is a good point, Brie. I didn't think about it, but yeah, like I was like, oh, I'm gonna just go out off on this trail with this random guy I met.
Feels a little rebellious.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm like, what am I doing? Like,
am I supposed to be doing this?
What am I getting myself? Yeah. What am I getting myself into? Is this smart? Like,
right.
I'm back to being single. Like, this hasn't been happened for a very long time in my life.
Do I need to ask someone's permission to do this? Just kidding.
Yeah, like, seriously, I went back home. I'm like, this is what happened. And my friend's like, sounds like fun. You should do it. I'm like, okay. So
we like that friend.
So like the next day I met him, and I was like, even where he told me to meet him, I didn't even know where that was. I was like, okay, like, I'm going to meet him here. I'm going to meet him at Camp 4 Bathrooms. All right. Like, and then, we're hiking together, and the clouds started moving in, and he's like, oh, this is bad. And I'm like, and he's a time-lapse artist. And I was like, you're a time-lapse. That would be super sick to get, the moonbow going in and out with the clouds going over the moon, like, that is a super cool setup, and we're going to do this. And he's just like he was just, and he's from LA. So he's used to living at sea level. So hiking up that trail is hard, when you're coming from that, and you're not already, it was hard for me. And I was there for a couple weeks getting acclimated to the elevation. Right. So, and I was like, oh, let's just hike super slow. Let's not give up on this. Like, so I had to kind of encourage him up the mountain. And, he gets me out onto this location, like this cliff. And to this day, I've never been back. I don't really know where it's at. I kind of have an idea where it's at. I would love to go there during the day, but it gets you right in front of Upper Yosemite Fall, just like right in front of it. And it was magical. And sure enough, the clouds moved away from the moon, and this moonbow just was just right there in front of my face. I could see it with my naked eye. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced in my life. And at that point in my life, I was really struggling. Like, why did I move away from my support system? I'm going through, I'm going through it right now. Like, I moved away from all my family and all my friends, and like, this is ridiculous. And I was really questioning my choice. And then in that moment, I realized this is why I'm here. This is why I'm here, to have beautiful experiences and to elevate my photography. I mean, before that, I was just a portrait and wedding photographer. And Yosemite was my playground to become a landscape photographer. And it really changed my life. That experience changed my life forever. And now that person, Brian, he's my really good friend. He knew, like, later on, me and my partner got together, we met up, and he always told me, hey, you need to meet Sean. Like, he really contributed to the relationship I have with my partner right now. He's like my brother to me. Like, it's just funny how life happens. You meet someone, you're like, I don't know about this guy, and then you realize, oh wow, no, this was, beautiful timing and a wonderful friendship.
Yeah, using your intuition to say yes or no, I think is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like we talk about this all the time. We have to, but look what happened if you didn't say yes. I mean, who knows? Maybe it could have, worked out great or whatever. But what a great experience.
Yeah. It was life-changing for me personally. And yeah, I did use my intuition when I did say yes. And the funny thing was that he even said, he's like, I never ask random women. Like, he's not that
Mm.
type of guy. So he must have felt like, oh, this is a good person. Like, I don't want to hike up that trail by myself either, type of thing. Let me ask her, if she wants to do that. And your body will tell you about people. Like, and I didn't sense anything off from him. It was just my other, like, oh crap, what did I just end up saying yes to?
I know, right?
And he literally thought I would cancel on him because, we started following each other on Instagram. He's like, I was really thinking you would just cancel on me because, like, what crazy woman's going to want to hike with a random dude she met a night prior, Like, he even said that. So it was a fun time and definitely meant to be.
That's awesome. I read a book all about awe, and I've since been paying attention to and making a concerted effort to experience awe. And I really think that these moments that we have, those big awe experiences, I think there's like these little awe experiences, like watching subtle light change on something that we didn't that we didn't really notice before. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I can see, like, I see that now, versus like this big moonbow in Yosemite, right? That is feels to me like a big awe experience. I think those ones are life-changing, especially when you combine it uh with like a shift in your life, and I think
Mm-hmm.
having those experiences is really important for us in the course of our lives. Yeah, like you said, it changed your life, and it did. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It was special.
That's awesome. Man, you took a photo of that, right?
I don't think I have it on the website, but yeah, I do have
Hmm.
a photograph of that.
We have other photos of Brittany to share. Or I do. I sometimes think, oh, I should say we when referring to like the podcast, but there's no we, there's just me. So I always have to, I'm like, who is it? Me and my other personalities or something. But I always have to back up and go, no, it's just me. That's it. Just Brie behind behind the mic and behind all the editing and behind all the things. So maybe one day there'll be a we, but I don't know. So yeah, what a cool experience. I want to see that. I feel like in the next couple of years, I need to come back to Yosemite with my camera because I didn't really do that before. That would be amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and especially if you can make a trip happen when there's a storm, that's my favorite. Literally my favorite.
Mm.
I will make special trips to Yosemite just to go and experience the clearing storms. You get all those low hanging clouds, and it's just so beautiful. The light goes in and out, and it's very much like treasure hunting because you just never know where the light's going to hit and what will it bring into existence, like there's a lot of hidden things and just look that's in Yosemite, and people don't normally photograph. They're so taken aback with icons. And I feel like, yeah, the icons are great and everything, but there's so much more to see and witness and photograph.
As there always is in any big place, there's not just the one thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I love that. I love that. You, in one of your images that we just talked about before we started recording, you told me how Half Dome, it's, I don't even know if you have a name for it, but it's that manzanita tree. It's that
Oh yeah, the
manzanita.
manzanita.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go to the blog post, there's a manzanita and there's some other evergreens. And then you told me that was Bridal Veil Falls. And you said
Mm-hmm.
back behind the manzanita it's El Cap, right? Or is it Half Dome?
Mm-hmm. It's El Cap.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the
Oh, no
geography. I
worries.
mean, I know which ones they are when I see them. So there's El Cap, but you literally can't see it. And I love that it's obscured, because that would be the thing that most people would focus on. And you're like, no, this is about the tree's place within Yosemite. And
Right.
it's really cool that I don't normally talk about photographs, but I love it that this tree you said it's kind of dying. It's probably dead now, but it has this amazing view if it could see.
Hey, yeah. Yeah, seriously. I mean, this tree, honestly, I've been to this spot so many times, and how many times I've overlooked this tree. It's not easy to see until you're looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And the day I found it, I was like, holy moly, like, you're here? Like, even where I look up from below at this cliff, I can't even see where the tree is. Like, it was hidden that whole time, and I caught it when it is dying. I mean, there's still red bark on the manzanita tree, but the leaves are yellow. So when I found it, it was just like, oh my gosh, like, wow, this is wonderful. It's like that treasure hunt that you've been wanting for years. And then finally it's like, oh, it's there.
Right.
And it was overlooking one of the most iconic places in the whole of Yosemite. I was like, you're right here overlooking this whole time, and no one has noticed you. Like, for all I know, from what I've seen, no one else has captured it before me. And so, and I had to wait for the right conditions, because I didn't want El Cap, because, then there would be a merger. It was right, El Cap was right behind it. And then I had to, get down really low because I was hiding in a parking lot. And it's a really tight shooting situation. And so I kept going back. Every time there was a rainy day, I kept going back, because I knew I needed the rain. I need the clouds to obscure El Capitan, because I wanted it to be about the tree, about and the waterfall. And of course, you got the evergreen trees in the foreground there. So, and then when I got my shot that one day, at the last time I went up there, like probably the 5th time I went up there, I was going down and I almost fell to my death. And I was just like, oh gosh, because it was slippery granite, doing it in the rain, And as Bree mentioned,
well, there's other factors. So tell us about the other factor. This is a great time for that.
As Bree mentioned when we were talking about this, she's like, yeah, what about your eyesight? I am blind in my left eye, and, seeing depth perception is super hard for me. That's, driving is an obstacle. So in itself, rain, you're dealing with wet granite situation. And then, with my poor eyesight, and my hair's all over the place, because I just got off from work and had nice hair. And then my hair is, I didn't even have a hair tie to pull it back. And it was just a thing. But luckily I made it out alive. I got my photograph, and then, and then everyone still questions, where's that tree?
Right. And you're like, please don't go there in the rain so that you don't die.
Yeah. I just had this one person ask me, I was like, okay, by the way, I'm not going to tell you where this is, just because number one, it's my tree, but number two is it can be sketch. I was like, I'm not going to lead someone up there,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know their capabilities are, or, and at that time I was a guide in Yosemite and I took safety very seriously. I mean, every day, the valley receives some sort of accident or something goes on.
Well, there's a lot of people that visit it. So I mean, and it is a wild, wild place. And I bet you're with your hair, I bet you totally looked wild.
Oh, my hair is, yeah, it's a beast in itself.
It has a life of its own.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, some of you have that. Mine is not, but so good.
Yeah, you gotta brush it. It's nice.
Well, here, there. When I was backpacking, I felt like I had a little bit of a life, but actually my hair didn't look too bad. Just pull it back, put a hat on. It's fine.
Nice.
Works out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's fine. Yeah. We're not here to look good for nature.
No, nature doesn't care at all. Isn't that beautiful? I love that. I love that nature doesn't care. But I kind of care when I'm around other people. Not totally, but I kind of still do. So there is that.
Totally.
Not to go along with this photograph, but I feel like your next experience, I asked you about a time that anything or everything that could go wrong did. And so this experience is fraught with a lot of risky stuff. But I feel like things that you could have prepared for, things that happened that you couldn't have. And anyway, I'll just leave it. But there's some of the same issues I think come up, that have to do with, photographing in sketchy places. So where is Ostrander Lake, or how do you say it?
Ostrander Lake is on the same road up to Glacier Point, which is one of the main viewpoints in Yosemite Valley. And one of my friends got got 4 backpacking permits, and I'm like, woohoo! My first, like, 2019. So I lived there for about a year, but my first backpacking trip in Yosemite Valley. And so I was just so excited, and we're like, all right, let's go. We're making this a girls' trip. It was photographers and other artists as well. So four of us, we hiked up to Ostrander and we just had a wonderful time. We got up to the camp, and one of my friends was like, "Oh, I forgot my tent poles." Ha 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 ha. And so she just had to sleep in with another woman. And so that was the first thing. And the next day we're like, okay, well, we want to do a hike. This is a 2-night backpacking trip. We have 1 full day here. Let's go on a wonderful hike. And one of our friends that was with us, she's a ranger. She works in Yosemite Valley every season. So she's like, oh yeah, I made it up there. Let me guide you guys up there. No problem. It's going to be fine. So we start out maybe about half hour to 45 minutes into it. And she stops in the middle of the trail and she's like, I can't do this. What am I thinking? And we all look at her like, huh? And she's like, you know what? I just broke my back. I don't want to do this. She broke, I think it was a season before, that winter, she broke her back. And I was like, okay, that's fine. No worries. And I understood, she's doesn't want to risk it. So me and my other friend, we just look at each other like, let's do this.
Wait, pause. I think it's easy to forget when we have an injury and we're healing. I think when we're standing still, it's easy to forget that it happened. But then when we start pushing ourselves, so I think that's where she seems like she was at. Oh my gosh, I'm pushing myself all of a sudden. I'm going to actually really injure myself. This can be a no-go for me. Okay.
Exactly. And honestly, I was surprised she even wanted to do it.
Right.
That was going through I'm like, you just broke your back, So, and then she was backpacking. That was already pushing it enough, the weight on her back, So it was just kind of like, huh, okay. And then we all stopped. And then me and my friend look at each other. We're like, well, we can do it. We can figure it out. We're smart. Let's just do it. Right. And we figured it out. So this is not a trail. So to get up to Ostrander Peak, we just scrambled our way up because it's this cliff edge. And so we went up this granite slab and we're just looking at the wall, how we're going to scramble up. There is a way. We were determined. We're like, there is a way to get up there. And we made it. Like, we figured it out, and we got up to the top, and it was just like, we were so proud of ourselves. We were just celebrating. Woohoo! Yeah. So happy. But we had a few extra more miles to get up to the Ostrander Peak. So we started walking, just in pure bliss, honestly. Like, and we got to the main viewpoint, looking down. I could see our campsite down below. I'm like, this is so wonderful. We made it. And then we start heading back, and then we saw a thunderstorm starting to make its way closer to us. And getting a thunderstorm in the summer it's kind of on the regular in Yosemite, but it's not like all the time. So it just kind of came out of nowhere, and I didn't even pack my puffy. I mean, this is summer. It was hot out. When I left, I wasn't even thinking about, I need a jacket. I need a rain jacket. I need this, so I brought some water and some snacks. That was about it. And I think I had a lightweight jacket, but not a puffy, just like a Patagonia lightweight zippy. And we're just like, okay, it started to rain, and I was like, okay, this is going to get interesting. And we hiked back where we thought we went up, and realized we have no idea where we came up. We didn't mark it with anything, and we're like, oh, that was our first big mistake of not marking our trail where we came up. And we're just looking at each other like, okay, what do we do? So we kept walking along the cliff edge, like looking for where we went up. And by the time I found it, it started to rain. And again, that slippery granite and down climbing on slippery granite, I was like, And at this point in my life, I was not climbing anything. I was just a scrambler. And so I looked at my friend, and I'm like, I don't think I could do it. I don't think she can do it. She's about 20 years older than me. And I was just like, I don't want to put her in that situation where she's freaked out too, because I'm freaking out. Right. And so we're like, what do we do? But I'm like, let's follow the tree line, and let's try to make our way down. Let's head east. Ostrander was in the west, so we headed east, hoping we can make our way back down and follow that tree line. But we kept cliffing out, and we had to go for more miles and miles and miles. And finally, we made it down to the floor. But then we had to go through several thickets of ferns and a whole bunch of stuff. There's no trail. And at this time, my phone is dead. She had a topo map downloaded on her phone. Her phone was about ready to die. She's completely out of water. She's completely parched, and I'm worried, like dehydration is going to set in. Before we left, I said, oh, I'm going to put in my my water filter. And she's like, oh, no, I'll bring mine, since mine's more travelable, because mine was the bigger kind. And I was like, okay, fine, bring your lightweight one. But I think she forgot, and there wasn't any fresh water anyways. All we passed by is some really bad murky ponds. I mean, we were getting to the point of desperation. Yeah, I might have used that with a water filter, but there wasn't like any fresh streams nearby. There's nothing. And I just see the sun just sinking lower and lower. And I was like, well, I know the sun's in the west. I'm going that way. And at that point, I was like, I cannot get stuck out here. We have no puppies. We have no headlamps. We're almost out of food. I have a little bit of water left that we were sharing. And I was like, we cannot get stuck out here. And another part of me was my pride. I was like, I am not getting stuck out here. I work here in the park. That's the last thing I want to be is like, oh, I had to rescue a local from the park, right? And so I was like, no. My adrenaline kicked in, and I started like running. My friends behind me, like, just, Brittany, slow down. I'm like, no, we need to get out of here. This is really bad. Like, this is a really bad situation to be in. Let's get out of here. And like, we're going up mountains and valleys, like going up and down. And every time we went up a mountain, I was like, oh, Ostrander is going to be right there. Ostrander's going to be right there. And we top out on the mountain, and it's like, oh, no, it's not there. Where the heck is it? And already the sun's like sinking lower and lower and lower. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, what are we going to do? Like, if it starts getting dark, we need to stop hiking. We have to just settle in for the night, right? Like, that's a smart thing to do. And just through several thickets and big, like, we were just running essentially for miles. Finally, on the last mountain, we topped out, and I see Ostrander. It was really like witnessing, like, if I can describe heaven, like, There it is. There's the lake. Like, oh my gosh, like we made it. We made it. But it was like the most terrifying thing I ever felt in my life. Terrifying. And we made it, and then we met up with our other two friends on the trail. That friend that, who broke her back, who was a ranger, she was about ready to break into the Ostrander hut and call for search and rescue. She was very close, and so they decided just to walk the trail, see if they ran into us, and they did. And they're like, oh my gosh, we're so worried about you. And we're just like, me and my friend were like, oh my word, that could have been bad. And we learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from not relying on other people to bring equipment. Like, I'm just going to bring, even though someone might have a better piece of equipment, I'm still going to bring mine. You just never know. And I've always, I learned, always bring your puffy no matter what the weather is, because something can happen and surprise you, and your headlamp, and just a first aid kit and essential gear. And I think honestly, we have to go through some of those experiences to actually really learn like how to be out in nature and how to properly prepare for it. I mean, backpacking, I mean, I'm not new to backpacking, but it's just like that day hike really just, things just kept going wrong, where it was just like, wow, that could have been a real search and rescue situation. Like a real horrible situation. And honestly, me and my friend look back at it, and we're still so proud of ourselves for going through that together, and then making it out alive, and being like, yay, we didn't have to have search and rescue come. We figured it out. And it definitely empowered us in that way.
Wow. Did you bring your camera gear up on that one?
My friend did. I just brought my phone.
You're like, I'm just going to go check it out and see. I know.
Yeah, middle of the day hiking. Most of the time, I'm just like, I'm not gonna bring the gear. My friend brought the gear.
Did you bring your camera gear up to the lake where you camped? I was just wondering.
No, my friend did. I decided, since it was my first backpacking trip of the season, didn't want to overload my backpack. And honestly, when I checked the forecast, there was supposed to be no clouds. But apparently there was a cool thunderstorm. She got some really, really cool photos of us up there. And like celebrating, and like we see these photos, and we're just kind of looking back at it like, oh. And then at that point, I don't think she was using her DSLR at that point, because we were just wanting to get out of there, like survival instincts kick in. But yeah, looking back at those pictures is actually quite hilarious. Be like, oh, that's when we were happy.
I have a little bit of sweaty palms thinking about how you could have not made it back. I mean, there's multiple things that could have been a problem. You could not have food for a long time, but water is a necessity. And probably actually what would be the problem sooner rather than raw water would be like hypothermia.
Once that sun goes away, it is cold. And that was the thing that I was thinking of, is like, okay, so my friend's like going on the verge of dehydration. Like, she was not in good shape. I'm just full of adrenaline. I need to get us out of here. Like, that was my thought process. And at the time, she might have been like, oh, why are you going so fast? Like, she told me like, you need to slow down. But I was like, no, we have to get out of here. Like, my whole survival instincts just kicked in. And I was like, I can't be stuck out here. Like, that could be bad. No, this is not happening. This is not my reality right now, type of thing.
Yeah, she needed you to urge her along for sure. Sometimes we have to be that friend. Okay, y'all, what you learned from that as to what to be prepared, or take someone who knows exactly how to be prepared, and then take some of your own stuff. So, oh my goodness. Well, thank you for sharing all of those things. So crazy. I feel like there's whenever you're on the mountains or someplace really really truly wild places, there's always these chances, right? That crazy things can happen. I mean, although, you're crazy. One of your crazy things happened just at the hot springs. So that wasn't even that wild, so.
Yeah, seriously. You just never know when things can happen, and being prepared is like what I learned is like, always just be prepared for things because this thing's not going the right way. It's
I
just
know. Well, one of the things that I love about your photography is you do this. Now you are doing this. Well, you do multiple things. Okay. So, just everyone know that. But I especially would love for you to talk a little bit about your flying dress experience, because I think this really like empowers women. And so tell us a little bit about that, and then anything else that you want to talk about before we go.
so the flying dress experience was for me essentially I love working with women. And I got to a point in my landscape photography, I was like, oh, I'm getting kind of bored, So I needed to figure something else out to do. So I started photographing nudes in nature. And then that's when I started like, oh, I really miss working with women again. Like when I was living in Portland, Oregon, I was constantly setting up models and we were just going out there being creative together. And so I was like, really want to do that again. And that's when the flying dress experience was born. I feel like there's hardly any like excuses for us women to get dolled up and get our photos taken. And I really wanted to offer this experience for women in all capacities. One woman hired me because she's like, well, I haven't got married yet. I want to do this for myself. And giving women experiences out in nature. Like I want to, I take people out to really amazing locations that they may not find on their own, and get them out in nature where they feel comfortable and there's no judgment, right? And they can just express their beautiful femininity. So that's why I started offering these types of photo shoots for women. And yeah, it's been a really fun journey. And my nude photography in nature is really what inspired the project, because that was just my passion project that I was doing with my friends. And I realized, oh man, like I want to work with women. Like I love working with women. I love teaching women photography. I love photographing women. And for me personally, that is a huge passion of mine, is to uplift and inspire the feminine.
I love that you've combined your experience with portraiture and wedding photography, because I feel like in conjunction with landscape, because I feel like this is like the culmination of all of it,
Mm-hmm.
and using that as a
Mm-hmm.
way. This isn't the only thing you do, but using that particular thing as a way to help women express more of who they are, or kind of just let loose, is really fun. I
Mm-hmm.
love that so much. So great. It's so great.
Well, thank you.
Brittany, this was really fun to have you on and meet you and hear your amazing stories. And I'm so thrilled that you didn't die in any of them.
Same. Thank you so much, Bree, for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a joy to talk to you.
Thanks. All right. Well, you guys all know we'll put links to all her stuff. So if you want to find out more about Brittany and what she does, or look at her work, or book a private session, or participate in the flying dress experience, you can just go click on those links. Brittany, I hope we get to see each other in person one day. That would be amazing.
Yeah, whenever you're in the area, just let me know. I live in Bishop, so just like you were in Lone Pine, like just a few weeks ago. So
I know. I need to come out and stay like extended and do some jaunts, like Yosemite out to wherever. I just need to come do that. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that would be fun.
Right?
Fun to show you around.
I would love it. You guys, audience, you guys know I don't do this podcast for you. I do it so I can meet people and go hang out with them, right? Just kidding. Just kidding. That's a bonus. That's a bonus side thing. So
yeah. Yeah, that's definitely deserving. Podcasts are a lot of work.
Right? I know they are. And also this one's really fun. But now this one's over and I'm going to say goodbye so that my internet doesn't crash. And yeah, thanks for joining me, Brittany.
Thank you so much for having me.
See y'all. Come with me on my next adventure. Be a wild woman and join me on one of my small group photography escapes in places like the cypress swamps of East Texas or White Sands, New Mexico. Go to wildwomanphotography.com for all the details. While you're there, you can check out featured wild women, episode transcripts, and more. Oh, and I'd love for you to support this podcast and all these incredible wild women in photography by leaving a review or sharing with a friend. Thank you so much for listening.